Evening again, accounting seminar 2021. I'm not showing my video because the internet is very low here, and so you may have issues seeing my screen if I'm to do both audio and video, hence my voice. My apologies. So we'll be talking a little today about budgeting. Your president just sent a link for you to give your ideas on fundraising activities. And after you have decided on those activities, you need to do your proposal, and included in your proposal will be a budget. So let's talk about budgeting. Now the presentation will touch a little bit on what is a budget, benefits of budgeting, types of budget, preparing the seminar budget, and your events budget. Now, a budget is a quantitative expression of an organization's plan. So every activity to be undertaken will have a cost attached to it. So even if some items we expect to get sponsors or sponsorship for, we're still doing a budget with the intention that we are going to be spending that amount. Are you seeing my screen?
No, Miss.
No, Miss.
No,
No,
Mrs.
Mrs. Sterling, it just went.
No,
It's
Miss.
not there.
All right, let me see if I can. I'm going to share the file in Blackboard instead. I just wanted the freedom to move with the screen. So let me share it as a file. Give me a second, please. All right, so it's been uploaded to Blackboard. Almost there. All right, so this is, while it is being uploaded, this is one of the challenges technology causes, and so we have to be prepared for this, even in our events or at our events. I'm seeing where persons want to have virtual parties. We have to ensure that our connection is strong enough to carry that event, or the persons who we have planning to use for those events, that they are in a position to, when the time is at hand. All right, so we are now at the slide where I was. So are we seeing now?
Yes, we can see Mrs.
Yes?
Sterling. It's coming up now. It's there.
Good. All right, great. So earlier I said that we are looking at what is budgeting, benefits, types of budget, preparing seminar and events budget. All right, so your budget is a quantitative expression of an organization's plan. So I was saying earlier, all the action items will require you to cost them. And so even if you are going to be asking sponsors to donate cash or in-kind contributions to your fundraising activity, we still have to factor those costs in our budget. Now, why this baby is hiding the word necessary, I guess Blackboard caused him to, but it says, is budgeting really necessary? Because some of us, we live our lives on a daily basis and we spend as we see fit without thinking about the next day. Or we're having an event and we have brilliant ideas. We're not sourcing materials. We're not seeking to find out how many persons are in the market that can offer the same service to us. Who is more affordable? So for some persons, it is, if I see this person and what he has looks good, then I'm going to go with him without consulting the other persons. So a budget, I would say, is indeed necessary. Now, what are the benefits of budgeting? Or what are the benefits of doing a budget? The first one says it ensures the achievement of the organization's objectives. So the first thing is you have an objective. Your objective here is to come up with profitable fundraising activities that will contribute the money towards our conference or towards whatever it is that we plan at the end, seeing that we're not sure what the outcome will be because of COVID. So let's say the end product is conference. So again, we know what the objective is, and it helps us to ensure that we achieve those objectives. All right, the next one says it forces an organization or individuals to plan. Now, if you're working with a budget, then the next thing is I will have to, in order to stay within my budget, find ways of ensuring that I spend minimal. So now, because I can't spend the amount I want to, I'm now forced to ensure that I go to market, find out who persons, and if we're talking about a party, for example, we're talking about DJs. So who is the market saying is the DJ right now? Who is happening? All right, and so that's a factor. I'm planning now that if I'm going to go with what the market is demanding, then I know that my price as such is going to be very high versus an art that is upcoming and is making waves. So again, you're planning based on how much you have to spend. The next one says it's used for control and performance evaluation. Of course, if I plan, I have a budget, I have my objectives, I'm planning. Now I can use it as a performance evaluation. So at the start, I budgeted to spend $100,000 for the persons, and by persons I'm talking about your disc jockeys that you will use for your event. And I said disc jockeys, and that was 100,000. Now, if you are to approach a Romish Entertainment to secure Escobar, then it may only be enough money for one DJ. So again, you're evaluating what you set out at the end. Did I budget enough for DJ? Is it that I probably should have gone with a DJ that would have charged me cheaper, and so now I have two because my crowd would have option versus one person for the entire time that the party is keeping. you're thinking about that and you're evaluating your performance. It also helps with communication, coordination, and resource allocation. So after you have identified the resources needed in order to make the event a success, you're going to mobilize your team. So my public relations committee, I need you to ensure that persons know about what is happening. Logistics, if we're talking about venue, I'm going to need you to ensure that the venue is booked and that if we're doing decoration, all of that is set, the staging is done. We do a map of how the venue will be on the night, etc. So you are now telling each person or each department or each committee where their help will be needed. And so each committee knows what is expected of them, right? So all of that, your budget can help you with. Now there are different types of budget, and we'll talk a little bit about each. So your incremental budget is a budget that is what we would consider as a budget that can result in inefficiencies. Inefficiencies in the sense that the person preparing this type of budget will look at the actual results of the past year, of the current year, the past year, sorry, and they will adjust each line item on it by the inflation rate. So I know a lot of times we like to draw on the experiences of the past seminar members, which isn't a bad idea. And so you may ask the sponsorship committee, sorry, the marketing and fundraising committee for their proposal that they use for their party. And you get the proposal, included in the proposal is the budget. And you're going to keep the same line items on the budget. And all you're doing is saying that price will increase and increase in each line item. That may cause some inefficiencies because whereas some items may have increased in value way higher than the interest rate, sorry, the inflation rate, some may have just been in the inflation rate. So we want to ensure that we avoid doing an incremental budget. The budget that I'm expecting us to prepare, or the seminar body to prepare, is a zero-based budget. So you're operating on the premise that no budget existed before, and every line item on your budget will be justified. So marketing and fundraising, you come together and do your proposal, you're going to send it to me, I have to run it by Miss Folks, who is the finance and accounting facilitator. And Miss Folks may say, no, we have to cut this line item. No, we can get this for cheaper. But it is justified in there, and then you have to also do further cuts. Or we may say, oh, this line item needs to be more, and so we'll increase such. But you're operating as though there was no budget before, and you're starting from scratch. So remember, the budget that you are going to use for seminar is a zero-based budget. Then we have what is known as a master budget. So your master budget is a budget that looks at smaller budgets put together to make a big budget. Master budget. So organizations usually use a master budget, and your master budget looks at how do we sell in order to meet a target. How many units am I going to sell? And if I'm selling that much units, then I need to produce that much unit, or I need to purchase that much unit. If I'm producing that, then I need to buy the material. So it is made up of smaller budgets. Right? Your flexible budget now is, as the word says, flexible. It is a flex budget based on the level of activity. So this budget takes into consideration cost, variable cost, and semi-variable cost. And for those of us who did IMAC with yours truly, I hope you remember what fixed, variable, and semi-variable is. The good thing about a flexible budget is that you can, at the end of the day, go back and assess performance. You assess performance, so you look at budgeted versus actual. Yes, Terry-Ann?
That was a mistake.
Are you trying out the... Okay. as I thought. All right, so we have two approaches to budgeting. We have the top-down approach and we have the bottom-up approach. The top-down approach is where a big figure is given or management may say, we have to increase our profit by 10%, which means that for us to get to that point, we have to increase our revenue by 20%. So that is the mandate for the year. Now, the departments will have to come together as a team to say, how are we going to make it? So I give you the big picture and you are to break it down into smaller pictures. Last academic year, the accounting body said that they wanted to make a certain amount. And that was the starting point. So for me, having said that or heard that, in my mind, I'm saying, okay, so they're using a top-down approach. Are you hearing me?
Yes, Miss, we are hearing.
Yes, I'm hearing.
Okay. So for me, that was a top-down approach because we have a big picture. This is how much we want to make. So in order for us to make it, we will now have to find the fundraising activities in order to make the target. Whereas you have some organizations who will say, I am asking each department that should be integrally involved in making our sales revenue what it is and more to come up with ideas. Then it is filtered to the managers who will look at it, give feedback, and forward their information to their senior management up to the board, right? So that's the bottom-up approach. Now this is where we want to get. The items that are here are, in terms of events, are events that would have taken place under a pre-COVID situation. So because we have not finalized the activities yet, what you're seeing is, some of the things that we would be doing. So again, your recommendation is a zero-based budget. In your budget, you're going to talk about the revenue streams and you're going to talk about expenses that you will incur in order to make those revenues. So here we have your walkathon sheets. Your walkathon sheets will be given to each person in seminar to ask persons for contribution towards the walkathon. And that would have been a source of revenue. We have cash donation from sponsors, you have your raffle ticket, we have party tickets, and in some instances, you could also have other fundraising events. Again, you could still have the movie night if we were in a pre-COVID situation, we could still have movie nights and other things. So you're looking at how are we going to generate the funds? What will be our source of inflow of cash? And you list them. After you have identified your resources, you will now have to identify the expenses that you will have. So earlier I spoke about procuring DJs for your party. If you're talking about the raffle tickets, you may have to call the places to source cost. Once you identify the supplier, you may have to go to the venue to pay and make a down payment and back. So again, you're talking about transportation. For the party, you may have to think about things like the sound system, refreshments for participants, and even the venue and other logistics will attract a cost. So you're identifying all of those first before you can say, I'm going to have an event, because at the end of the day, it must make sense to you to have an event. If you have done your budgeting and at the end of the budgeting process, you're making a loss. So this is before you ask your sponsors to sponsor particular line items in your budget. Because remember I said earlier, we are making the budget as though we're spending all of that money. The hope and the aim is to seek sponsor for as much as we can so we spend a minimal amount. But the expectation is we still have to make that budget. If after we have identified the budget and it's not working, then you don't go ahead and do the event, or you may have to make adjustments. So we'll talk about adjustments in budgeting as well. So this is your overall seminar budget. So now we have a budget to do. What are the events that we plan to have? How are we going to generate those funds? Where will they be coming from? What are the expenses that we're going to incur? Now that we know that we want to keep a version of Versus, or we want to keep another type of party, which is a gospel concert, whatever the case may be, based on what you've provided to your president in the link, we now know that we can earn income from that. We'll add them as new streams, and we will also look at the expenses to see how we are going to fare out at the end of the day. Now, I know it's going to be difficult to put figures to your costs, to your activities right now, seeing that we're not even so sure how we are going to get to the party. So we're going to do it online. With what platform are we going to do it for? How will it be hosted? How will we ensure participants pay? Somebody is marking on my screen. How do we ensure that persons don't enter the venue without paying, etc.? All right, so we have to look at that. So that's your seminar budget. Now for your events budget, your events budget is a projection or forecast of the income and expenditure that the event itself will incur based on plans made and information gathered. So after you have listed the activities that you plan to have for the academic year, it must have its own budget. So you have to go ahead and do a budget for that based on the resources that are needed. Now the next point says continuous adjustments will be required. Of course, at the start, all those figures are budgeted figures. Even if those are figures that are given to you by suppliers or by the participants or persons who will be participating in the event, things can change, right? So we're budgeting now for maybe next year, prices increase. If they're quoting you in US dollars, then you know more than likely if you're converting it to Jamaican dollars, it's going to be higher than what you're told now. And I realize that even our DJs are quoting their prices in US, and that is to save them with the rising inflation and interest rates, right? So you have to ensure that for each item, a budget is done. And you have to go back. So you can't prepare it now for next year and you just leave it until it gets close to the time for that event to be looking back at the budget. All right, so one activity could have you adjusting another. So an activity this year could have you looking back at what your budget for an event next year to make some adjustments based on actual costs incurred. Now, when you're going to have an event, there are some rules to event budgeting that you have to pay attention to. You budget to avoid making a loss, which is why at the start or earlier I said to you that you're doing the budget to see if the ventures are going to be worthwhile. If they aren't going to be, then don't do the event. So you budget to ensure that you're not making a loss. It says be realistic about the event's income. Be prudent. Now it's better to budget and say I'm going to make 100,000 than to budget to say I'm going to make 500, and at the end of the day you only make 90. I did not make the 100, but I went close to 100. So my expectations were a little bit more than, but at least I took the actual. Again, you can't have a venue to host an event, and the venue can only hold 100 persons, but you are budgeting for 250 patrons. That don't make any sense. So if you're looking at the event, you're looking at how many persons the event can hold, for example, so you can budget accordingly. you're saying persons know about the event. We get in the best DJ. The DJ have a big group of followers. They are going to be at the event, and so we'll make X amount. If the venue can't hold, persons are going to come and leave, or persons inside the venue will leave. All right. So either you're losing ticket sales or you're losing bar sales. So you have to be realistic about the event's income and the activities leading up to the event. And my last point here says have a contingency plan. So if plan A is not working, I have to now mobilize plan B, activate plan B. What is my plan B? And possibly you need to have a plan C. So you are at the event, and let's say, again, you catered for this time realistically 100 patrons, because that's what the venue can hold. And so you're estimating that your consignment will be in alignment with the number of patrons you plan to have. And you are running out of beverages. What do we do? Do we end the party because we don't, as most persons, they don't have what to keep them? I mean, the DJ may be good, but they still want some spirit, right? So we want to ensure that we have a backup plan. So do I have a consignment, a consignor on hand that I can call once we realize that we're getting close to or we're running out to restock? So you have to have a plan for that. If on the night of the event somebody jumps the fence, do we have security to escort that person out of the venue? What if someone in the venue fell down and broke their leg? Do we have an emergency medical care personnel or a team of them at the location to assist the patron? So you're thinking about all the things that can happen, and you're putting those things in your budget to ensure, or a part of your contingency budget to ensure that things are okay and the event runs smoothly. Any questions? Any questions? Go ahead, Ashane.
In terms of budgeting approach, Miss, can